cocaine. Physically and sexually abused as a kid. Mom rented her out for her own drug to get her drugs. She actually pulled it together pretty well for a number of years, made it through high school, was starting to go to college, was an assistant manager at a McDonald's, and then made the mistake of falling in love with a guy who was just fresh out of prison, who introduced her to heroin and a lot. And she was, when I was working with her, she was involved in an abusive relationship. And one day I remember sitting with her saying, so can you ever imagine, in your wildest fantasy, can you ever imagine a man, because that's what we were talking about at the time, a man just loving you for who you are? And she said no. I said, in your wildest fantasy, flights of imagination. And she couldn't. And I thought to myself, I don't know where to go with this. All the experience, all the knowledge, all the motivational interviewing techniques and tools are available. I don't know where to go with this. Because if you can't imagine it in your own wildest imagination, where do you go? And I struggled for another few months trying to find out whether before she disappeared. So where's that don't personalize? When I was there in that world with her, I was trying to imagine, and I talked with others, tools and ideas and whatever. But when she couldn't imagine and she could not did not take steps to change any parts of her life, and I just had to accept that I just lacked talent. I didn't have the right answer at the right time for her. I wasn't there. Maybe somebody else did. Maybe she's doing fine today. Whereas if you stay in the downside, then we give up on the next client. The weird thing about working with people is we never know when we've given them a key that will unlock something for them later. I distinctly remember a guy at an open forum at Community Mental Health used to have every spring an open forum for the people from the community to speak to them about issues and so on, things that we were doing in the field. And a guy got up, and there was potential cutbacks in some substance use dollars, a fear of that. And he got up to describe that he had been an addict most of his life, and he'd been in and out of treatment programs, residential programs, and that CMH had spent lots of money on services for him, none of which were successful. Until one day, I didn't mean to do that, come back. Till one day, he said, I went into detox, then I went into long-term res, then I came out of that and went into a group home living arrangement, and he said, I don't know what was different, but something stuck on that one. And so he was like 5 years clean, had gone back and finished a master's degree, and was now a counselor in one of the substance use programs. He said the two things I want you to remember is don't ever give up, because you never know when something clicks. Because there was nothing he could identify in that click. So oftentimes we don't know when we are working with somebody, especially young people, that we've given them some tool, we've given them some things that later on they're able to put into play that alters the direction of their life. All right. The other weird thing that happens in our profession is that frequently when we're done working with people, there's oftentimes not necessarily a formalized termination process. Well, there's sometimes with foster care and the residential stuff. But oftentimes, they just kind of complete the round and they're just kind of gone, and we don't know what happens later. In an outpatient world, you never know, oftentimes you don't know whether the impact of whatever it is, the work that you've done together. People stop coming, or they think they have enough, so we don't see the reward kind of stuff. We don't get to see them changing their lives later. The other thing that makes me conscious of those contributions is when somebody comes back and says, oh gee, what we talked about last time, that was really so helpful, and I took your advice and my life is da-da-da-da-da. And I usually stop them there and say, well, first of all, I never give advice. We talk about options, but I generally don't give advice per se. So what was that pearl of wisdom that I laid out there that was so meaningful to you? And they usually tell me something that I know I didn't say. They almost always tell me something I know I did not say that, because I wouldn't. But there was something in what we were talking about that they heard something that they grabbed onto, made it work for them in a positive way. So when I say don't personalize for those folks that are unable to take advantage for whatever reasons at that time of the work and energy that we put into it, we also can't always take credit for anything that was successful, other than having a conversation in which they grab onto something that works for them and moves forward. Okay? And accepting the situation. This is amongst the hardest things that we do when we're working with people. Part of the reason we get into this profession is we care about people. We want to make a difference, help people make a difference in their lives. We are caring and we want to be helpful to folks. And we cannot be necessarily, not every single person that we ever work with is going to be able to take on that assistance that we are attempting to provide and be able to use it, at least right now. Maybe later they will. So that opportunity of being able to pay attention to, where do I see my successes in my job? What kind of things can I count on that when I look at the work that I'm doing with folks, that I can say, I'm giving it my best shot. I'm trying to provide the most correct tools. I'm trying to help folks come up with problem-solving habits that get them there. Where do you define for you? Where are you able to define successes for you? So that we can accept this is my life, this is part of my job, providing that. But what people do with it is kind of up to them. Okay. So, I want to challenge you now to create some life-work balances.
Alicia Ramsey, your appointment is here. Alicia Ramsey, your appointment is here.
No, there's a success. Somebody came to their appointment. I count that as success. When people don't come to their appointments, they don't necessarily count it as a failure. But if they come, that's usually a good feeling. Okay. All right, so as you have, I've challenged you on a couple of different areas to think about kind of what's going okay in your life, what's kind of not going okay in that wheel of your life. What I want you to do now is to create a change plan for yourself. And so the first is come up with a couple, what's one thing I can do this week to change some portion of my wheel of life, my work-life balance. So it's one step, one thing that I could do this week that begins to change that direction. This is a commitment to you. What's one thing I can do differently that will help change my sense of meaningful purpose or my living a life of reasonable contentment? My client once said, so what do you hope to get out of coming to counseling? She said, I just want to be happy. And I looked at her and said, I'm not that good a therapist. I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good. I said, you know, if you were happy all the time, pretty soon you wouldn't know it. Because you'd have nothing to contrast it against. So let's not strive for being happy all the time. How about if we strive to have a life of reasonable contentment? Because if we strive to have a life of reasonable contentment, it's kind of on a sliding scale. If I can ask myself every day, given everything going on in the world, given everything going on in my world, given everything going on in my life, am I reasonably content? And if I can say yes, I can enjoy my day. It's when I say no, then I have to look at what area of discontent do I have? What am I going to do about that? And the idea of being on a sliding scale, when my mother died 9 years ago now, I could still ask myself that question in the weeks after her death. Given everything going on, am I reasonably content? But it was at a different level, because I was active in the grieving process, and I knew I wasn't operating at 100% efficiency, but I was still reasonably content. So what do you need in your life to be reasonably content? What's one step that you can do? Okay, whether it's an examination, whether it's whatever it is. So after you've come up with one thing you could do this week, what's likely to get in the way of you actually doing it? What natural barriers are there? Either the barriers between your ears or the barriers going on in your life that's going to prevent you from doing that, potentially could prevent you from doing that. Third thing, what can you do to reduce or overcome that barrier? So now you got a game plan. Can't change all of our life all at once. We can change one thing. We can strive to be changing one thing, which potentially gets in the way. How can I overcome that? So now you have an opportunity to change your life. You have an opportunity to gain a life of reasonable contentment.
So, I always have to give an advertisement for Encompass. One of the benefits that DAB St. John's purchases is Encompass. If you go on the Encompass web page and you put in DABSJ as the username, it opens the browser to everything that Encompass provides on behalf of DAB. Also, provide up to 5 sessions of confidential short-term counseling at no cost to you. Okay. So, go back to thank you so much for being here this morning. Hopefully there's some things that we threw out there today that will challenge you to make some changes for yourself and keep moving forward, because if you do not take care of yourselves, you cannot take care of the people that are relying on you to help them through their life issues. Thanks a lot. Please fill out the evaluation. I have no idea what to do with them. I presume you can leave them here. You can leave them with the young lady in the back who's waving her hand. and she will get them to Nina.